Hey everybody, welcome to the Angst Podcast. My name is Jericho and I am the host and the creator of the series. This is going to be episode number 15, but I might actually title it episode 1. I haven't decided yet. The reason being is this is a little bit of a rebrand for the podcast. So in past episodes, what I had done is I had taken my audio recordings, my ideas, my rants, whatever topic I wanted to go over for that day, and I would upload the audio to the internet. For anybody that wanted to tune in via YouTube, which is obviously a video streaming platform, I needed some type of visual stimulant to go alongside the audio. So a couple options to fix this. Option number one would be I would just have some type of generic backdrop, just a little box or something that represented the Angst Podcast, like a brand or a logo or me or whatever, I'm not sure. But I just didn't feel like that was very visually stimulating. If somebody was going to tune into a YouTube video, I feel like they wanted to have something a little more engaging than just a still image for 5, 10, 20 minutes. So my solution at the time was I've always been a little bit of a gamer at heart, and I was already playing video games, specifically Overwatch. I owned a capture card, and so I figured what the hell, I would just record my gameplay, and then I would upload it alongside the audio of the podcast, stitch them together, and bam, I'd have a YouTube video. A couple issues with this. One, it's a little bit of a unique idea. It was very rare that the podcast audio or the topics I was discussing actually had anything to do with what you were witnessing on screen. It was very often not related to any video games or gameplay of any kind. So I think that confused a couple of people. Also, it just became a little bit redundant getting the clips. I'd have to have a clip that I felt somewhat impressive or like I did a semi-decent job of. I then have to edit them all together and splice it so that the time lined up with the audio and that it was the exact length. And this, not that it was that difficult, but it just feels like maybe if I was putting that extra time into the podcast, it could actually go into the topics or the ideas or the audio quality or other characteristics of the podcast that actually have to do with what I'm discussing, as opposed to just some random video games that not everybody even cares about. So this is the rebrand. I think this is the way to take it with the webcam. I'm going to fuck around with the bit of the lighting with a background in the studio space that I have a little bit and hopefully make that a little more engaging for you guys. But I think this is just a way more natural conversation to have. When I go onto YouTube, I watch different videos and vloggers all the time that essentially they'll splice up bits of their ideas into these quick little like 10 to 15 second segments. So they'll rant about something and then they'll cut, and then they'll continue ranting about something and then they'll cut. And then it's super weird because it's not a natural conversation. It's these very laid out points in this quick, like shiny, cutting visual stimulant that's supposed to somehow keep you engaged. I'm not about that life. I don't want to be that type of YouTuber. I want to have these long form, unedited, uncut conversations. And obviously it's a pretty one-sided conversation. I know I'm doing a little bit of the talking or the majority of the talking here, but if you knew me in real life, you'd understand that that's relatively par for the course anyways. So I invite you guys, if you do like the topics that we go over, if you feel like there's an engagement to be had, if you benefited in any way from the podcast or the topics, please leave a comment. Please let me know. I'd love to have a discussion with you guys. If I'm wrong about something, if you disagree with what I'm saying, also please leave a comment. This is kind of for you guys in the sense that I want to go over cool topics and talk about fun shit, and hopefully you learn something from it. But it's also an opportunity for me to just grow and learn myself. I've always been somebody that enjoys playing devil's advocate. I need to go over and verbalize my ideas, and then if people like them, I can see that, and if they don't like it, then I can receive that feedback, and I'm okay with that. I think in 2018 there's a bit of a push here that nobody's comfortable talking about weird ideas or expressing their views if they're not considered the status quo, or maybe individuals aren't going to agree with them. And I don't think that's the direction we should head as a society. I think instead people should discuss their opinions and then be open to changing those opinions. So if I say something on here that you guys don't like or that I'm definitely wrong about, this is a great opportunity for me to learn and grow. Not being limited to my geography, my cultural background, the opinions of my peers, but I get to engage with individuals from all over the globe. And so hopefully I get some new content and some new ideas from you guys as well. So for episode 15 or 15.1, what I wanted to go over today is food and nutrition. The reason being is this is something that I'm super passionate about. In recent years, I have gotten to engage with a community of fitness individuals, nutritionists. I've made some friends that are in the culinary field. They're line cooks, they're chefs. And it's rubbed off on me in a very good way. I've started to learn a lot about what I'm putting into my body, what it takes to make food taste good, what it takes to make food nutritious. And I'm developing a little bit of a skill set myself. And this is something that I'm passionate about because it directly relates to me, as does everybody else on the planet. Everybody's got to eat. Everybody enjoys eating good food, and everybody should be caring about their nutrition. Nutrition is the building block of what makes you the person that you are. It gives you energy. It motivates you. It helps you fight disease. It helps build longevity and strength. It keeps you alive and functioning and running on all cylinders all the time. And so I think I'm always surprised when I meet individuals that don't know a lot about what it takes to create nutritiously dense food, or individuals that don't have any culinary skills or aren't comfortable cooking for themselves, because it's something that we're literally all engaged in. You must eat every single day or else you'll just get depressed and die. So I'm hoping that I can hopefully give you guys a little bit of insight and information into what I've been able to learn in the last couple of years. And I thought I would just break it down into a couple different topics here. So what I'm going to start off with is just trying to define food in general. I think this is pretty obvious for a lot of people, but I personally have seen, at least in Western culture and in Western diets, a bit of a disconnect in what we actually consider to be food. So I don't have the Merriam-Webster's dictionary definition open in front of me, but if I could recall it, it's something to the effect of any substance that an animal or a human can put into their bodies to help sustain life. So I think that one works pretty well, specifically the sustain life part. But again, I believe that there's a disconnect that's currently occurred in the modern era with high produced foods, microwavable foods, and just an agricultural revolution that's been occurring for the last couple of 100,000 years here that have gotten us disconnected with what food used to be, and now we're eating what we think food is. And so I'm going to come up with a term, or hopefully try to coin a phrase here to help us create a distinction. I believe that food should be something that smells great, tastes great, doesn't poison your body or harm you in any way, shape, or form once it's consumed, won't make you feel shitty later on, won't cause chronic disease, won't decrease your telomeres or your longevity or anything, won't put you in a deficit of any way. It should absolutely make you feel better. It should enhance your existence here. That's food. What's not food is something that you can put into your mouth that, yes, maybe it tastes good and it satiates you temporarily, but a couple minutes or hours later, maybe you don't feel so good. Maybe it crashes you a little bit. Maybe it makes you feel a little sad or depressed. And in the long run, if you were to constantly take in these items and consume these substances, it would actually be detrimental to your happiness and to your existence. Things would start to fail. Components of your digestive tract and your organs would start to break down. Diseases will start to rear their ugly heads. And I don't think we should consider any of those items food. I think we need a rebrand of some kind. So bear with me. I've been trying to come up with a couple of terms. Let me hit you with some not so good ones. Food stance, like a food substance. It's kind of average. Food ucks, like food products. Also not very catchy. I don't think it's going to go. My buddy helped me out with this one. I like an acronym, food-like products. So we're going to call them FLIPs. FLPs. So for the sake of the next couple of episodes or going forward in the podcast, if you hear me say that term, those are food-like products. Those are things that want to be food. They're very much trying to be food, but they're just imitations. It's a farce. It's a phony. And so I could come up with a big list, but let me just shoot a couple off. Chocolate cake, granola bars, things that contain tons of high fructose corn syrup and fillers and preservatives, Hungry Man meals, and chips and things that have incredibly long shelf lives, and Twinkies. They could survive a nuclear holocaust. Like, these are things that, yes, okay, maybe you can eat them and you won't immediately get fucked up. And yes, okay, maybe they taste okay at first face value, but they shouldn't be considered food. They will not sustain life. If we go back to that generic definition, this is not something you could consume all the time. Yes, you might keep living, but if you start to live feeling sluggish, if you start to live putting on weight, if you can't perform physically or mentally or cognitively fogged, you're feeling depressed, these are symptoms. This is slowly killing us. This is something that, yes, it doesn't happen the second you put it into your mouth, but they're poisonous. They shouldn't be considered food in the long run. I'm not here to say that they have absolutely no benefit. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy eating a chocolate birthday cake just as much as the next guy. I do believe that there's still something to be said about taking in some flavor. That does temporarily benefit you, and I might even say that it benefits the soul in some way, because we have been able to create these culinary masterpieces of flavor, but it's definitely not something that we should be teaching citizens or the youth of tomorrow to consume full time. We shouldn't be tricking them into thinking that it's okay to consume these items day in and day out, because it's not. I think we need a direct distinction, especially here in Western culture. That's one of the issues that we're seeing with Western diet, is processed food has somehow made it into the category of just food, and that's something that you can consume on a daily basis without repercussions, and that's just not true. Let me talk a little bit about how I think we got here. Again, we could go way back in human history. We could go thousands of years back to the agricultural revolution, but I'm going to try to keep this current with my generation, my parents' generations, maybe even my grandparents. I think that we had a food crisis. We had individuals across the globe that were we had a baby boomer generation. We needed to feed people. There were third world countries and impoverished nations that had access to very little food. We had world wars and soldiers that had to be fed, and other continents and other countries, and we had to get food over to them. And we had the consumer that all of a sudden, instead of being a farmer and having a garden and growing food, fresh in their backyard, all of the farmers moved out. All of the people moved in, and we have these metropolises where not a lot of food actually gets produced. It just gets shipped to. So if we're going to be shipping food in, whether it's to soldiers or supermarkets, it needs to have some type of shelf life. It needs to have preservability qualities. Yeah, I think that's a word, so that it doesn't go bad and that we can actually feed people all across the globe. And so there's some technological breakthroughs that have helped accomplish this, and I'm just going to rattle off a few. One would be a microwave. Something like a microwave, I think, had a major stranglehold on the modern day Western diet, because what happened was you had people increasing their productivity. People were getting very busy. They were taking on a lot of jobs and extracurriculars, and they were always on the go and in their cars. And women entered back into the workplace and started getting jobs and leaving kitchens. And so you didn't necessarily have a stay-at-home individual that was prepping food for the whole family. Everybody was on the go and being productive. And then introduce a technological breakthrough like the microwave, and all of a sudden, instead of having to grow your own food and prep it and spend hours in the kitchen slicing and dicing vegetables and cutting meats and seasoning and cooking and then cleaning all those dishes, you can just peel off some plastic fucking container and lid, throw that away and create a little bit of waste, and pop something in the microwave for X amount of minutes, and bam, the whole family's fed. The problem is, going back to what I said before, I don't think that's actually food, because instead of being natural spices and ingredients, we've created a whole list of ingredients that we can't even pronounce or even know what they do to, in theory, add preservative qualities or flavors to the dishes. So that's one technological breakthrough that I think has kind of accelerated the progression from food to flips. Other ones that I could go over, something as simple as grain refinery. There's nothing wrong with eating grain. I am somebody that I understand that there's conflicting science here, but in the past, it was definitely obvious that humans evolved alongside eating wheat and breads and grains. And there was a technological breakthrough that we went from using stone grinders that would break down the wheat and get us to, this fine white flour powder. And we switched over to an automotive metal steel grinders. And the advantage is that these are a lot faster. They break the grain down to even a finer flour, and that can increase profits. That increases speed. That allows us to feed more people and create different products that we wouldn't have had in the past. But the problem is, it's not something that our gut and our microbiome has necessarily evolved alongside, and isn't necessarily as efficient with processing and breaking down. This is something that's a lot more foreign as far as humans are concerned and nature is concerned. So yes, although it's increased productivity and profits, it might not have been nutritionally the best for humans and the digestive system as a whole. So these are just a couple examples. I could go over many, but we've had technological breakthroughs that have allowed us to view food as something that should be quick and on the go and easy, as opposed to something that should be nutritious. We've started to push the world in a direction of, let's feed everybody, let's keep it cheap, and let's make it last and be preservative. And those things have, served us over the last couple of years, but I think going forward is not the direction we need to be taking food. We need to be taking food in a direction of, okay, what is natural and organic and not only tastes great, but also sustains life in a healthy manner and fights chronic disease and fights depression, mental illness, and all these other things that we've already mentioned. Not only have we had technological breakthroughs that have kind of changed our interaction with food and our relationship to eating, but we've also had government regulations and lobbyists try to push us in that direction as well. For example, let's say in the past, I had invented an item that maybe wasn't the most nutritionally dense, but it was cheaper. Let's talk about margarine, for example. It's cheaper than butter. It lasts a little bit longer. It's got a better shelf life, but it maybe comes with some nutritional consequences or scientific anomalies that we haven't seen in the past in our diet. And so what governments would like to do is maybe step in and educate the citizens and say, hey, this is an item that's for sale. Yes, it's cheap and easy to use, but it might not be the best for you. So here's a little bit of a warning. We'll just give you a warning. Well, margarine companies are going to step in with their lawyers and their lobbyists, and they're going to say, well, hey, now that's not fair, because if you put a stamp on our product saying that it's maybe not the best for you, it might have some negative consequences, that's going to affect our bottom line, that's going to affect our profits and our sales. So these individuals will fight back and say, no, don't put any labels, don't put any brands, there's nothing to worry about. And they might even run their own studies that conclude there's no problems, there's no danger whatsoever, and whatever the government was telling you is wrong, because we just ran a study that says it actually benefits you, or there's no disadvantages, is at least what I should say. So this is also a very scary era, because we have conflicting points of views here. We have individuals that say, okay, well, maybe this product's not that good for you, but then you have the product company itself saying, oh no, it's perfectly fine for you. Don't tell us what we've already been creating and dealing with for years now. Blatantly prime example, something like the tobacco industry. You have warnings and regulations that force tobacco companies to say, this may cause cancer, this may increase chance of a heart attack, this is not good for you. And the warnings are graphic. I mean, we've all seen them before. They're designed to deter people and give them the necessary information that it's fair for them to have. This should also be done in the food industry, but it's very rarely seen. Something like Coca-Cola quite obviously can be related to diabetes and heart disease. The science is in, the facts are in, there's a ton of sugar and fillers in these products. If you're consuming them on a regular and daily basis, this will have long-term health consequences. But Pepsi and Coca-Cola and all these major brands refuse, and they will try their absolute hardest to make sure that we do not put a diabetes warning label on their cans, because that's going to affect their profits. Even though, the scientists can get together and say, yeah, we know it's an issue. The governments can get together and say, yeah, maybe it should be regulated. These individuals have so much money and lawmaking powers and lobbyists that are very, very, very good at what they do, that they're not going to allow the government to come in and dictate whether they should have to put a label or rebrand themselves in some way that says this might be dangerous, or this might be food-like or imitation food, and it might not be good for you in the long run. So we've got a lot of competing factors. We have technological breakthroughs that make it easier to produce food-like products and longer shelf life available food items. We've got lobbyists and government restrictions that aren't doing a very good job at telling us what is safe to eat and isn't safe to eat. The squash and the apple and the kale and the carrot that are sitting in the grocery store, nobody's coming up with branding that makes them sound healthier or makes them sound beneficial. But I invite you to walk down your local grocery store's cereal aisle and granola aisle and pick up a box. And I bet you it has some label from the Heart and Stroke Foundation or a Healthy Heart brand or some type of bullshit, phony, whatever that makes it sound like it promotes some type of healthy lifestyle, or that they've run some study that this is going to benefit you. And that's just propaganda. That's companies trying to sell products. That's companies manipulating stats and coming up with whatever little bit of data they can to make themselves sound nutritionally beneficial and satiating to the human being, and their lives. It's not good. And it's a very interesting age that we grow up in, where there's all this misinformation all over the place. I don't want to be all negative. However, I do want to talk about a little bit of positives here, because I think there's some solutions for Western diet and for the modern day Homo sapien to head in. And so a couple things that I want to mention is that I think we need to just get back into the kitchens. We've started to create a society where we build homes where kitchens are tiny and compact. You maybe have a little bit of counter space here, and if I turn to my left, there's going to be a fridge, and if I turn over here, there's going to be my oven, and I don't really have a lot of space for anything, because why would you? Most people eat on the go, or out of microwaves, or out of takeout boxes, and so you don't really need a lot of counter space or a big kitchen. You could, that space in your home could be used to other things. And I think we need to get back into the kitchens. We need to open up those counter spaces again. We need to have an arsenal of tools that we can pull from. We need a full spice rack. We need healthy fats and good cooking oils. We need pots and pans and good strainers and good knives. That's something that I see when I walk into most people's houses. I see dull knives or generic knife cutting blocks. Starting with a good toolkit and having a very sharp chef's knife, something that can actually cut through produce incredibly effectively and efficiently, that will keep you safe and allow you to speed up your prep time, that's huge. I mean, if you're somebody that doesn't have a lot of spices, if you go to the store and you decide that you're going to create some type of dish, you want to experiment with something new, you want to feel healthy and good and create something for yourself, well, you're going to have to get a cookbook or go online, and you're going to have to look up a recipe. And then you're going to have to buy all of these individual spices, because your spice rack is essentially close to empty. And then you're going to get home and you're going to start prepping all of these things, and you're going to realize you have a dull knife. So it takes you a long time to prep and cut and dice everything. And then you're going to have to confirm and keep reading the book every time, because you're not actually sure how this should taste or what spices should go in. So you have to perfectly measure everything out. You're not seasoning to taste or your own personal palate. You're just trying to follow the recipe. So this takes time, where you're looking back and forth, and you're looking up and down, and then you're adding, and then you're it's such a process. Whereas the chef that already has a full spice rack and a good set of tools and is seasoning to how they want the dish to be, and they're just creating in the moment, they're so much more efficient. This goes so much faster for them. So I think that's step one. We need to get back into the kitchens. Anything that you do every single day, you're going to get good at. At first, when you start, when you're dicing up vegetables and when you're cutting meats and you're seasoning things, you're not going to be very good, but you eat literally every day. So how long is it going to take? A couple months, a couple years? All of a sudden, you're going to be cooking with good spices and good oils, and you're going to know what you're doing, and you're going to be able to prep things very effectively. So I think that's step one. We need to get back into the kitchens. Kind of with the spice thing going hand in hand is I think we need to build our palates. We need to get away from thinking that flavor comes from additives and sugars and sweet things and things that we wouldn't necessarily find in nature in the concentration that they are. We grow up from such a young age eating things that have been produced to trick the palate into thinking that they're super delicious. So they have all these fillers. The problem is that actually fucks up the spectrum of what flavor is. A prime example I can give you guys is coffee. I really like coffee. I drink coffee almost every single day, and I usually take my coffee black or occasionally bulletproof, but I'll leave that one on the side for now. I like black coffee. I think coffee itself has brilliant flavor. I appreciate the complexity and the aromas that I get from it. And I know countless people that do not consume black coffee, yet they think they consume coffee every day. This is not the case. If you are one of those individuals, if you put 1 cream, 1 sugar in your coffee every single morning, I'm here to break the news to you. You don't drink coffee. You don't even like coffee. You like a coffee flavored product. You like a coffee-like product. A clip? Can I call it that? Like a flip? That's what you enjoy. You enjoy coffee flavored items. But if you have to add the sugar and the cream and all these fillers every single time, you're not even appreciating the aromas and the flavors that is just the bean, is just the coffee itself. And I don't mean to come off as a barista snob or some hipster coffee lover. I don't mean for that at all. What I mean is just to say that there's an appreciation for flavor with coffee. And on the spectrum of flavors, coffee tends to fall on the bitter end. I think we've trained our palates to always approach and go for this sweet end. So we feel like we need cream and sugar because that's the flavor. But where's the appreciation for the bitter foods? Where's the appreciation for bitter is just part of the flavor spectrum. It's not something to be avoided and disgusting. It's just something that is. If you learn to appreciate, if you take in these bitter flavors all the time, you'll learn their characteristics and their distinctions, and you'll learn when to utilize them and when to back away and use sweet. It depends. It depends on what you're going for and what you're creating. What's another example that I wanted to bring up very, very similar to the bitterness? Oh, the bitterness for food itself actually can contain nutritional properties in nature. Sometimes when we're consuming vegetables and plants and spices and herbs, bitterness can actually be associated directly with medicinal properties that can fight cancers and decrease heart disease and have all these different components to them. Whereas if we're constantly searching for sweet, we might actually be missing some of nature's most valuable medicines that they actually place into their bitter foods. And so that's also quite disappointing. Another issue that I kind of noticed just as I enter into adulthood and start to cook and learn nutrition a bit more myself is I am blatantly disgusted at grown people's inability to experiment with new flavors. It's incredible to me. I meet grown men, 50, 40-year-old men that are just anti-food X, like Brussels sprouts. Fuck Brussels sprouts, am I right? And these guys are just, that's the most disgusting vegetable. I can't believe that anybody would ever eat a Brussels sprout. It's so gross. That's because those people grew up on grandma's overcooked shit sprouts, okay? They had Brussels sprouts a few times when they were a kid. Somebody made them that didn't know what they were doing, didn't season them to perfection, didn't cook them correctly, and now you have an idea of what a Brussels sprout tastes like, which is incorrect. It's based off of some shitty Brussels sprout, and you've just categorized all Brussels sprouts as being disgusting. That's ridiculous, right? Like, do you guys not feel that if you went to a professional chef, somebody that had really practiced food throughout their entire life, that knew the chemical compositions of food and the spices and flavors to incorporate, you don't think that person could make you a dish? If you describe to them your palate and the profile of foods that you like, you don't think that they could make you a dish containing Brussels sprouts that tasted good? You're just going to discredit Brussels sprouts for the rest of your entire existence. And I'm not here to just rip on Brussels sprouts. This happens time and time again for people all over the world where they say, oh, I don't like this food item. Well, when was the last time you tried it? Were you 9? Were you 9 years old? That was the last time you ate that thing, and now for the rest of your life, you'll never consume that substance ever again? it disgusts me. I think people need to be way more experimental with their palates. This is part of getting back and away from this processed food. Is we've become accustomed to sugar, sweet, processed, and this is it. And everything else, if I don't like it, it's not good. Well, how about we genuinely experience food, objectively analyze it, and if it doesn't taste good, let's figure out how to make it taste good. Because if something is readily available, if it's cheap, if it's nutritionally dense, why not come up with a skill set that you can incorporate it into your diet and actually enjoy it? I think people should be eating a diverse range of diet and foods all the time. And just because something tasted bad one day doesn't mean that for the rest of time it's a disgusting ingredient and should never be utilized. It's just ridiculous to me. It's sad. And so I get how we've arrived at this point. I think that there's a lot of things that we need to work on as a culture, and education between ourselves is something that we need to go for. I'm still in the middle of this process. I am by no way, shape, or form a talented chef. I understand I don't talk about these things or these variables to try to be, high and mighty on my horse, that everybody needs to follow my charge and that this is the way to go. I talk about these things because I experience the issues themselves. I experience the desire to want to take things to go, and I experience the hustle and bustle of life, and that I don't want to cook today and I don't want to prep food, and why is it so hard? But if it's something that we all keep ourselves accountable for, if it's something we're all willing to work on together and grow as a species, if we can get back to being the chefs and the gardeners and the farmers and actually be passionate about our food, I think it could have a really big benefit for all of us. I'll leave on this last point. I think one of the biggest issues that's happened with food here is, and going back to our palate thing, we've gotten distracted. Instead of eating food in social situations where we take the time to sit down, to actually smell the item, to put it into your mouth, to be gracious and thankful for the opportunity that nature has given you. I'm not religious, but to say a little prayer and to just, thank the land for the nutrients and thank the animal that died for the opportunity to keep you going and create a better individual. I think that we really need to get better at that appreciation factor. If you sit down at a table and you go to eat something and the whole time you're on your phone and you're just looking up, Instagram videos while the TV and Netflix is playing, you're barely appreciating the food. You're not giving yourself an opportunity to grow and enhance your palate. You're not actually closing your eyes and thinking, what am I tasting right now? How could this be improved? What flavor is that? What ingredient is that? You're distracted, man. You're on the internet, you're watching movies, food has come secondary. You have no appreciation for what's actually going into your body. You have no gratitude for the energy that you've just received. It's on the back burner. And I think that part right there is dangerous. If we could get to a point where food was not only just for something to fill and satisfy a hunger craving that we're feeling in our gut, but it was also an interaction with our environment and our community and our loved ones. And it was a shared experience of like, hey, I made this food. I'm really happy with how it tastes. Everybody come sit down, enjoy the aromas, enjoy the flavors, enjoy the nutrients and how we feel, and have a cheers and toast over it. I think we need to get back in that direction where food is a social bonding experience. The reason I believe this is so important is because science is constantly trying to break food down to just the sum of its nutrients. It says that, a banana contains all of these macronutrients and micronutrients and vitamins, and this is what satiates the human body, and this is what we need to survive. So if we take in, vitamin A, D, K, B, if we take in fat, carb, protein, if we have potassium and calcium and all of these different things, and we take that in any 24-hour time period, that will be sustained and life will continue. That's what science would like to say, but the evidence actually points away from that. If that was the case, we could just take a bunch of supplements and powders and pills, and we could just take in all of those nutrients and be fine, right? But we can't. There's a weird disconnect there. For whatever reason, these things need to come in the source of food. If we take them in synthetically or artificially, it doesn't seem to take. It doesn't seem to work. Another prime example I could give you would be baby formula. Breast milk for babies is crucial in the development of our youth. We can break down breast milk into its components. And again, the micronutrients, the macronutrients, see what makes this up, see what makes what babies need in the early stages of their development. And then we can create a baby formula that contains all of these items. But the weird thing is that it doesn't seem to work as well. The science would say that all of these nutrients and components should be beneficial for the child, but instead we end up with a baby that's not very satiated. It doesn't work very well. It doesn't take the same way as what the raw natural breast milk would have done on its own. So I think science is a little perplexed by this issue, and I have just a theory to end on. I have absolutely no scientific data or evidence to back this up. This is 100% just an Angst Podcast fucking bro science point. But I think there's a spiritual connection with food that we miss. I think from a scientific and a nutritionally dense standpoint, these things need to not only just be taken in externally, but alongside other variables. There needs to be that appreciation for the food. There needs to be that social bonding experience. There needs to be that gratitude for your environment and for the sun and the animals and the soil and all of this that comes together. And there needs to be an actual interaction with our environment in some way. And if you're somebody that's eating food in takeout containers on the go, not thanking or thinking about where your food came from, not appreciating the flavors or the community that this could potentially foster, I think you're losing in the enzyme production standpoint. I think that your body will physically not absorb the nutrients as effectively as it could if we had dedicated ourselves to our environment and if we had just shown the appreciation for the food in the first place. So hopefully that all made sense. Hopefully that inspired you guys in some way. I'm really excited to continue along my nutrition and food journey, and I would love you guys to join me. I think it'd be a lot more successful if everybody's in on it. So everybody's got to eat. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you for the next episode.